Good morning, friends. It's Wednesday of our first week, and today we're talking patterns and zentangles. The only things that you're going to need are your sketchbook. Yours is probably some bright color. We pulled it out of your art supply bag yesterday, and you will need a pencil. I'm going to use a marker just so you can see my lines nice and bold as we follow along and practice and review our work of patterns. Patterns are a great place for us to start with a review to give us a good building block to bridge from last year. Patterns are something we use all the time in art. Pretty much anything that you look at that's art, you can usually find some sort of pattern within the artwork. The pattern is part of the principles of design of repetition and rhythm. Repetition refers to one subject or shape being repeated. Pattern is a combination of elements or shapes repeated in reoccurring and an irregular arrangement, where rhythm is a combination of elements that are repeated but with some sort of variations. I know that some of that might sound a little confusing, but we'll look at different examples of this throughout artwork this quarter that'll help start to make the idea of repetition versus rhythm versus pattern and how we can discern between those things. Pattern is definitely something we have explored quite a bit in our artwork. We know that pattern is when we repeat certain elements of art. We can create patterns by repeating the elements of art of color, line, shape, or texture. All four of those are some of the basic building blocks of art called the elements of art. We can also add into those other elements of art form, value, and space. All right, so in your sketchbook, this is your sketchbook. I want you in your free time when you're doing some random drawing or having fun, please feel free to decorate the outside. I left it blank so that you can personalize your sketchbook to you. So what I've included is something called Zen Doodle. This was created by another art teacher who I thought did such a nice job in recreating something I really wanted to bring to you. Most of you should remember the term zentangle. Zentangle is a term that came up from a psychologist and an artist pairing. What they found was that sitting down in the act of just creating patterns and doing some repetitive drawing and doodling could be a form of relaxation and meditation. So I thought this was a great way to bring something to you that hopefully you might find useful at home. I know that I do a lot of this when I feel stressed out and need to relax or, just kind of don't know what to do and need something to keep my hands busy. So what you have here are a number of different pages of different examples of zentangles, or what this art teacher calls Zen doodles. So we have ones that utilize the shapes of triangles. We have some that feature checkerboard patterns, right? That's just your straight lines that go one way and another. So you can see how the many different variations here of checkerboard patterns. Then you have lots of different line patterns here. And finally, some organic shape patterns. So what you have are example pages that walk you through the step-by-step of creating the Zen doodles. And you have 4 boxes in order for you to practice. So what I'd like you to do is not only pick out 1 or 2 that you enjoy making, but also create some of your own. So on this page, whatever Zen doodle or zentangle that you create, I want to see at least 2 that you work on copying from the examples here, and then 2 that create your own, but the 2 that you create of your own should feature triangular shapes. And then you'll flip to the next page with your checkerboard patterns. Again, try 2 that feature checkerboards, try 2 on your own. Same with line patterns, same with organic patterns. I'd love for you to try to knock out at least 2 pages worth of this today. You should be setting aside when you're working at home at least 30 minutes for your art practice, aside from continuing to do your 5 minutes a day on your sketch prompts, which is included on your Schoology page as well. Complete this work, again, in your pencil so you can erase if you make a mistake. If you're having a hard time coming up with some zentangles on the ones that are your own, you can of course copy all 4 different ones from the how-tos here. But I'm also going to include a reference folder in your Schoology that has a number of different YouTube Zentangle example videos that, again, will walk you through step by step how to create different Zentangles. So I'll include that for you as well. But by the end of the week, as you continue to work on this, I should see all of your boxes finished with all the different types of examples. This is great practice work because you're going to put this into a little piece of artwork featuring your name for this week. I'm going to show a couple examples you can follow along with me, but primarily this is going to be a little bit of work on your own as I've provided the steps for you to follow along and do your own work on these. So we have a number of different triangle ones to show. I really like the arrowhead one, so that's the one I'm going to work on. The first step is to draw a number of triangles to fill the space. Again, I'd like to see you do this work in pencil. That way it does not bleed through to the other side, as my marker lines most definitely will. It's important that we can draw on both sides of our paper in our sketchbook. But when I draw in pencil on our demo videos, it is more difficult to see, and I want you to see lines clearly. So you can see I'm just kind of, it's almost like that scallop line pattern that we like to create that looks like fish scales, except instead of a little curved line, I'm doing that with kind of that sharper alternating triangle line. So as you work, I hope that this repetition forms a little bit of a way of relaxing and meditating, kind of getting lost in creating the rhythm as you go through your piece. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to draw smaller triangles inside of the triangles that you created. And step 3 is to color them in. So I'm going to kind of combine those two as I work, because I feel like it'll be helpful for me just to kind of draw and color as I go. Usually when I sit and create artwork too, I like to put on some nice relaxing music as well, and that really helps to add into kind of that relaxation feeling of kind of doing this Zentangle, this Zen doodle. So I'm going to end up kind of stopping after this row just to demonstrate the next few steps. And what you can do is just pause the video to complete your piece. Okay, so this portion here, we see that I've completed up through step 3. Step 4 is to add a line to connect the tips of your large and small colored in triangles. One of the things that I think is important and that I like about Zentangles is you are working to create a nice pattern, but you know, none of these examples are really exact. It's okay for not all of them to match perfectly. So after I finish that, then the last one is to add some really close diagonal lines on one side of the white portion of the top of the triangle here, and it's going to add some shading. So you can see it's almost going to look a little like optical illusion-ish, especially with things being in just black and white. So just the side that's off to the right here, you're just adding some thinner, kind of close together lines here. All right, I think that looks really cool there. I love the way that that turned out. So to finish that, I'd obviously carry it all the way through. And then you can work on maybe trying a different style and then creating some of your own. Flipping here, I'll do a little checkerboard pattern as well. I love this checkerboard pattern so much, and it's really easy to do. I love that it kind of looks like a braid. So it starts with just creating some vertical stripes here, and you want them to be as even as possible. You know, like making things super duper small is just going to add to the amount of work that you have. So, you know, make sure that it leaves you enough room to show the repetition and to carry it through in an entire pattern here. But I don't want you to feel like you have to make them teeny, teeny, tiny, and each one of these boxes is taking you forever. You can see it's just doing a number of now zigzag lines, and my zigzags touch each line, and that's when I switch direction when I touch the line there. It also demonstrates here where you could choose to do one vertical line at a time. So first making all my diagonal lines that slope down to the right, and then on the next one those diagonal lines that slope off to the left. So there's kind of two different ways to do this for how you want to carry your lines through the piece here. All right, so I would continue those lines all the way across. Oh, I'm getting a little gunky there. It'll still look cool. I don't want you to freak out too much about any sort of little feelings of mistakes. I kind of got those really small and I've been making them bigger here, but it's going to work out and it's going to look awesome. The point is just having fun with the repetition, not getting too caught up in the details, and making sure that this is hopefully a nice kind of relaxing way to keep your mind busy. Okay, so like any checkerboard alternates the coloring in aspect here. So I just am going to start coloring in every other box. Now, if you felt like you were really coloring a bunch in with your pencil and you wanted to get out like your black colored pencil just to make it a little bit more of a higher contrast with the black and white, then with kind of the grayish lead of your pencil, you can use some colored pencils in your sketchbook, but you need to avoid the markers just because they bleed through, which you can see happening. It's muddled up my example piece here, right? So to finish that, I'm just carrying that pattern all the way through to create the checkerboard. All right, lots of different line patterns to choose from, and obviously, you know, you can think of all different sorts of lines to create some of your own. So I'm really intrigued to see what kind of line patterns you come up with. I like this one with the overlapping arcs down here, so that's the one I'll demonstrate. You're just going to pile on a series of arcs here. So I'm going to start with a couple here, then I'm going to build off of it. So I like to kind of think of like, okay, I'm going to do 4 at a time, and you just kind of change directions and have them overlap one another. So 4 there, then I'll start one here. And then you can work on the side. So I think this one is a really good example of like more of that rhythm. Sure, there's repetition, but it's not a consistent look to the pattern. So the pattern's created just creates more of that rhythm feeling because each piece is different, although there's some variation to it there. I can also start off this end, and then I'll get to a point where they're all going to overlap and intersect. All right, so keep filling up with arcs, and then the last step here likes to take the smallest circle and just color it all the way in black. Okay, so complete that until it fully fills the box there. The last kind of set here are those organic patterns, right? So we're moving away from more of those geometric type shapes and into patterns like a seashell pattern here. Now this one kind of looks like a little peacock line. Obviously you have lots of different shapes inside shapes, and these are a lot more free flowing. So it's about creating more of that rhythm. I'm going to play around with the pointed arc, the one that looks like a peacock feather. So just like I started the triangle one, you're stacking these arcs. From there, I'm going to place in the middle here, kind of right on top of the point, we place a circle. And still paying attention to even the ones that go off my paper here. All right. This one adds even a darker line in the middle. And then it's kind of creating an inner arc that we're gonna add some stripes to that kind of radiate outwards from that center part. So these are lots of boxes to fill in. We might not all get completed this week, but I'd like you to continue to revisit this when you revisit your sketchbook, when you're working on your Independent Monday time. Keep coming back to these Zen doodles, these zentangles. When you're not sure what to do, just practice some designs, create your own. Check out the reference videos with some more zentangle ideas as you continue to fill these spaces. I think this is starting to look really cool, and at first I was a little disappointed because I felt like my lines looked a little messy, but as I'm adding these pieces and it gets more elaborate, it doesn't matter so much that the shapes are a lot different. My arcs didn't turn out super nice and neat, but still, as I keep working through it, I think it looks cooler and cooler as I go. So I'm really excited about that, actually. And I was feeling a little disappointed at first. That's the thing about art. We keep pushing through the things that we see as mistakes, and we find ways to correct them. We find ways to change them and to make them shine. So you want to practice enough Zen doodles that you can get to the end part of creating your name. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you examples of how to write your name in block and bubble letters. And then you're going to take one of your project pieces of paper. You're going to write your name huge. It needs to fill the space of your paper. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. I don't want to see teeny tiny letters. You're going to create a nice big shape of a letter, and then you're going to fill each one of the letters of your name in with some different patterns. They don't all need to be as complicated as some of these Zen doodles, but I should see at least 3 Zen doodles represented. Obviously, some of you are going to have much longer names to write. So at least 3 kind of Zen doodles, and then some of your others can be more simple kind of stripes and polka dot patterns as well, because those are important patterns for us to practice. I'll show you more examples of that tomorrow. Continue to take some time to really work on filling out more of these Zen doodles and practicing some of your own designs.